Hello, everyone. We're continuing on a teaching now that has to do with victory is achieved by obedience. We are going to have victory in our lives when we are obedient to the Word of God. Now, what I mean by obedient is not that we never miss it. If that was the case, we would never see any victory in our lives. I know I've missed it, and I'm probably guessing you've missed it too. But it's being obedient to do what God is telling us to do. And the prime example that we used was King Jehu. How Jehu, he missed it in many areas of his life, but he was obedient to do what God called him to do, and that was the destruction of Ahab's family and Jezebel. He did what God called him to do. He was obedient to that calling, and as a result, God blessed him and his family because of it. So when we talk about, we're talking about obedience, I want to make sure that you don't get discouraged and say, well, I missed God in this one, I sinned here. Well, that excludes me now from seeing any victory in my life. I don't want you to be discouraged in that respect because you will just throw in the towel, you'll want to give up. So it's these things that God's telling you to do. It's in that area of obedience that we can witness God's supernatural hand of victory in our life. And now, when I talk about victory, what are we referring to? Victory is seen in God's provision for our life. The victory is seen in God's protection. It's seen in God's blessings. It's seen in God empowering us to complete His assignments on our life. Victory is also when you and I are able to stand firm in battles and temptations. So when we talk about victory, these are the things we're talking about. So with that, we first started sharing with you all how God is the one that actually wins the battles. There's nothing that you and I can do as far as in some situations, they're going to be completely out of our hand. We don't have the ability to determine an outcome as far as what we can do. This is where God steps in. This is where God does those things that you and I can't do. And what enables him to do it is when you and I are obedient to do the things that he tells us, then God does those things that you and I cannot do, that are out of our control. Keep that in mind as we teach on this series of victories achieved by obedience. Now, I want to pick it up to this part of the teaching, and it has to do with victory from enemies who are too strong for us. I'm going to give you some scriptures, a couple scriptures here, and what I want you to get out of this is there will be situations that are absolutely over our head. You may be in a situation where you're an addict to something, you're addicted to something. You can't get free of that. It might be alcohol, it might be pornography, it might be drugs, or it can be in any situation that is a marriage that is out of your hands. You can't do anything about it. So are we going to be victims to this and it's just the way it is? Or what does the scriptures say about situations like that will give you and I encouragement and hope to where that no matter what it looks like, kind of like a Lazarus deal, 4 days dead, that when God got involved, when he entered into the situation, Lazarus, even though dead, was raised from the dead. So a situation in your life may look as dead as Lazarus's. But let's see what God says in his word now. Let's first of all, let's go to Psalms 18, Psalms chapter 18. And we're going to start with verse 16, 18:16. And here's a situation that I'm talking about that is, let's put ourselves in this position or this circumstance, this situation, and see what God did about it. Verse 16, he, that's God, sent from above, he took me. God drew me out of many waters. Waters is a representation or symbolic of situations in your life where you're drowning. You are drowning. You don't have a lifeboat. You're on your way to death, destruction. Now watch this. He sent from above. He took me. God drew me out of many waters. Now look at this, verse 17. And a lot of you are in this situation. You feel like I've been a drug addict all my life. I've been a drunk. I can't stop what I'm doing. Now watch this. Verse 17. God delivered me from my strong enemy and from them which hated me, for they were too strong. They were too strong for me. You see what David's saying here? There's been situations where David said, my enemy was too strong for me. And today we might say, these drugs are too strong for me. I can't stop them. I can't quit. I've been doing this most of my life. I cannot stop. But I want you to see what David said here. David said that God reached from on high. He reached down and drew me out of a situation that I could not stop on my own. I was in a helpless, hopeless condition, but God was able to do what I could not do. Psychiatrists couldn't do it. Medication couldn't do it. Therapy couldn't do it. AA couldn't do it. NA couldn't do it. And any other thing couldn't do it. But God's saying, you know what? God can do it. And I want you to get a hold of this. I want you to get faith in this. I want your faith to be built up right now. You might have started projects for God and never been able to finish them. You've maybe been a quitter all of your life. You never finished anything. And you know what? It's like you're in a rut that you can't get out of. Well, I want you to know God can reach from on high and draw you out of these many waters from the enemy who, like David said, was too strong for me. The enemy was too strong for me. A spirit of homosexuality, a spirit of lesbianism. I can't break free of this. I want to. I desire to, but I can't stop it. I can't quit doing what I know is wrong. Well, here's where God says, I can deliver you from an enemy who is too strong for you. He's stronger than you, but here's where I step in. Now, let's look at now what the next verse has to say. Look at Psalms. Yeah, oh, this is good. Psalms 81. My good friend, Evangelist Billy Tatterson, preached this one time at the church. And I'm telling you what, I have never forgotten it. And it's been between 10 and 15 years ago. That's how long it's been. And it has stuck with me ever since. And I want you to catch this. This is so powerful. Psalms 81. Look at verse 13 and 14, because we're going to see the condition now of what David we just read in Psalms 18. We're going to get the condition for God being able to deliver us from our enemy who is too strong for us. Are you ready? Here we go. We're starting with verse 11. Verse 11. Psalms 81. But my people would not hearken to my voice. Israel would not have anything to do with me. So I gave them up to their own hearts' lusts, and they walked in their own counsel. Now watch this. Here we go. Here's where it gets good. Look at verse 13. Oh, that my people, so he's talking about you today, believers, born again believers, had hearkened unto me. If you had just hearkened to me and walk in my ways. Now here it is. Here's the kicker. Verse 14. I should soon have subdued your enemy and turned my hand against your adversary. You see, now we're connecting Psalms 18 with Psalms 81. And what David is saying is, I'm helpless. I'm hopeless. I've been in this rut. I can't get free of it. This sin has got me where I can't get free of it. Well, now, Psalms 81 tells us what God can do about being able to deliver us from an enemy that's stronger than us. He says that if you and I will hearken to him, obedience, walk in his ways, we're not talking about never missing it, though we should not miss it, but if we do, we can confess that sin, and God is faithful and just to forgive us of that sin and to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. He says, if you'll walk in my ways, the ways of love, which we're going to look at those ways in another teaching. God says, verse 14, here's what I want you to get. Are you ready? Here it is. I would have subdued their enemy. I would have subdued your enemy. I would have turned my hand against your adversary. You see, we can't do it, but God can. God would have brought about the victory in our lives from this bondage that we had, this addiction, this thing this rut that we've been in that we haven't been able to get out of. God would have done it, because you can't. But what enables, the point that I want you to get right now is so important in this. Here's the point. What gives God the ability to do this is when you and I hearken to his voice. When we walk in his ways, God says, now I'm stepping in. Now I'm going to do what you can't do, what you have not been able to do in the flesh, and how the flesh has kept you in bondage to this addiction, this sin, or whatever it is. You know what? I'm going to take my hand and I am going to subdue your enemy. Let faith rise in you right now. Let this be an encouragement to you. You don't have to stay defeated. Now, when God says to walk in my ways and hearken to my voice, obviously he's not talking about the thing that's kept you in bondage, or you would have been able to yourself got free from that. So the ways that he's talking about and hearkening to his voice is not you stop sinning. Otherwise, you would have done it. He's talking about do other things that I'm telling you to do in my word. By doing those things, then I will free you of those things that you can't get free of. You might be in a situation now in your marriage where it's hopeless, it's helpless, and you don't know how it's going to change. You know what? How it's going to change? I'll tell you how it's going to change. By doing what God is calling you to do. By doing that, guess what? God's going to step in and heal what you can't heal. What you can't do, God can do. Don't worry about what you can't fix. You do what you're supposed to do. And in doing that, God will do what he and he alone can do. Let me see here. I got one more scripture. Let me see what it says. Proverbs 1:33. Let's see. Proverbs 1:33. All right. Let's see what that says. Proverbs 1:33 says, all right, here we go. But whoso hearkens unto me shall dwell safely, and you will be quiet or delivered from fear of evil. All we have to do is hearken to the voice of the Lord, hearken to his word. And as we do, then God does those things that we can't do in the natural. I want you to see this. Quit trying to fix what you can't fix, but you start doing what you can do, and then leave the results up to in God's, not up to God, but in God's hands. God's already said in his word what he'll do, but you can't do it without him. And how does he do it? When you step back and you just do what he's telling you to do. I want to encourage you with this word today. Let hope prayerfully it's speaking to your heart, and then we're going to pick up the things next teaching on. We're going to be more specific on things. God bless.